All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Katie Hill. I'm the Executive Director of the University of Chicago Crime Lab. Today, we're here to learn more about the City of Chicago's Violence Reduction Dashboard. A group of dashboard experts are here to give a little bit of a demo and share some useful examples of the dashboard in action. The Violence Reduction Dashboard is a partnership between the Chicago Crime Lab and the City of Chicago. And I also want to thank the Pritzker Pucker Family Foundation and Chicago Cred, who were our funders to work to build out this dashboard. First, I'd like to briefly go over today's agenda. In a moment, you'll hear from Garien Gatewood, the Deputy Mayor of Community Safety for the City of Chicago. He'll share some opening remarks about the value of data availability and how the dashboard has supported the city's people's plan for community safety. Then we'll hear from a group of dashboard experts and super users who will demo the dashboard for you and provide some examples of use cases and the ways they've used the dashboard in their work. After that, we'll dive into a Q&A to answer questions from the audience and questions that were submitted ahead of time via the registration form. Please feel free to use the Q&A feature throughout the webinar to submit your questions, and presenters will also answer questions via the chat. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared with everyone who registered. Now I'm going to turn it over to Garien Gatewood. Garien serves as Chicago's first ever Deputy Mayor of Community Safety. In this role, he leads cross-government efforts to eradicate the root causes of crime and violence and advance a comprehensive, people-centered approach to public safety. Garien spearheaded the creation and implementation of the People's Plan for Community Safety, a community-led initiative that unites Chicagoans from all walks of life to address historic disinvestment, work towards healing our communities, and make Chicago safe for everyone by strategically deploying resources, investments, and holistic data-driven approaches that include addressing economic disinvestment, access to education, and centering those who've been victims of crime. Garien previously served as the director of the Illinois Justice Project, where he helped guide policy in support of the Illinois Safety Act. Before his time at the Illinois Justice Project, Garien was director of policy at the Juvenile Justice Initiative and was appointed by Governor Pritzker to serve on the board of the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, or ICJA. Thanks so much for being with us today, Garien.
Thank you for that warm introduction, Katie. So happy to be here to talk a bit about the importance of data and how the City of Chicago has used our Violence Reduction Dashboard. The work with the Violence Reduction Dashboard has been incredible for a few reasons. I think it helps build trust in communities, and I'll talk about what it means to build trust in communities, especially coming out of some of the times we've been in across our country. Building trust in communities by having data readily available so people understand and know what is happening in their spaces, what is happening even down to a community, a ward, a police district, being able to share real-time data on what violence is happening and how violence is reducing. How we use the dashboard to help us reduce violence, it genuinely helps us think about how we deploy our resources. And when we say deploy our resources, I don't just mean the men and women at the Chicago Police Department. I also mean our partners in community violence intervention. I mean our victim services partners. I even mean our community members who are doing this work, because everybody plays a role in how we're driving safety down. Everything we do is data driven. I'm sure many of you on this call today have been able to see some of the remarkable declines in crime in the city of Chicago. For instance, in April, we had the lowest number of homicides in any April since 1962. And that very same month, we had the lowest number of homicides in any decade in a decade for that month. We followed that up with May with a 38% reduction in homicides and had the lowest number of homicides in May since 2007. Data helps drive how we make our decisions. Data helps drive how we inform our decisions. And it really helps us understand the best way to utilize our resources, the best way we can connect with people. We use the Violence Reduction Dashboard throughout the People's Plan for Community Safety, which is our approach to safety in the city of Chicago, which includes a multitude of working groups, 20 working groups. We launched them all at the same time because I guess I didn't feel like I was busy enough. So we launched 20 working groups with our partners throughout the city, county, the state, and our partners on the ground who are doing incredible work. That data helps drive all of the decisions we make. that data helps us understand how to show up for people in their time of need. And it's not just about, because there's always this interesting piece when it comes to violence reduction. A lot of people look at violence reduction as year-over-year success. Having a tool like the violence reduction dashboard gives us space to look back at our work 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, so we can understand the trends even more, so we can better understand how we can attack these problems. I don't know where we would be without our violence reduction dashboard, but what I can tell you is with that violence reduction dashboard and our partners, we are trending towards a historic year in declines in violence in the greatest city in the world. I am thankful that we're here today, and I hope every one of you does your work to get a violence reduction dashboard in your city. The city of Chicago is willing to help. We're willing to educate, inform, and learn from you, and we can learn from each other about all of the work that we can do together to drive violence down from around the country. With that, I'll give it back over to Katie, and she'll get us rolling. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Garien. We really appreciate you joining us today to share your perspective on the impact of the dashboard. Before we dive in, I'd like to get a sense for who's in the room, the metaphorical room with us today. So if you would go ahead and answer the poll that will pop up in a second about what sector you represent, we can get a sense of who we've got in the room. Voting concluded. Great. Thanks so much, everybody. It looks like we've got a really nice mix of folks in here today from government, nonprofit, research, philanthropy, and my favorite category, other. So thanks so much for being here today. And we really hope there's something in this presentation for everyone. Before we get to our experts and our demo, for those of you who are new to the organization, I just want to do a little bit of framing. The University of Chicago Crime Lab is a nonprofit research organization dedicated to improving the public sector by designing, testing, and scaling innovative programs and policies that generate evidence about how to make government systems more effective. So to anchor our conversation today, I'm going to start with maybe what Crime Lab loves best, which is some data. So first, when we think about violence, where are we today compared to where we've been in the past? If you look at the rate of homicides in America, the rate of homicides, homicides per capacity in the United States today is about the same as it was over 120 years ago. You've seen some fluctuations over time, but it's about the same. Where are we compared to other countries? How does the United States stack up? Here, it's very clear to see the United States is a significant outlier. When we look at homicides per 100,000 people by country, the United States is experiencing significantly more homicide than our peer rich countries. And we can see if we look even further into the data that disparity is really driven by gun violence. If you look at the red part of the bars in this graph, those represent the gun homicide rate. If you were just looking at the gray, the United States looks pretty similar to other countries. And it's when you add in the gun homicide rate that it becomes really clear that the United States is an outlier. Where does Chicago sit in all of this? Well, compared to American cities, Chicago ranks in the upper middle range. There are definitely cities in the United States experiencing significantly more gun violence per capita than Chicago. But when we think about what we might consider our peer cities in Chicago, like New York and LA, how does Chicago compare? Maggie, if you could, thank you so much. Compared to New York and Los Angeles, the nation's three largest cities, including Chicago, tracked homicides for decades and looked very similar. You can see a little outlier in Chicago in the 1920s and 1930s, the Al Capone era, but otherwise these trend graphs look pretty similar. But then starting in about 1990, if you look at the graph, New York City and Los Angeles have pulled far ahead of Chicago in terms of their homicides per 100,000. So that to me shows there's a significant challenge in Chicago. But it also shows that there's hope, because New York City and Los Angeles have managed to achieve what I think Chicago aspires to achieve in terms of bringing down its gun violence. So that brings us to the violence reduction dashboard and our love of data. At the Crime Lab, we care very much about data. It's essential to understanding challenges, to designing solutions, and to measuring impact. So in 2021, the Crime Lab publicly launched the Violence Reduction Dashboard in partnership with the City of Chicago and provided the technical expertise to build the tool. Most of the data in the Violence Reduction Dashboard is owned by the Chicago Police Department, and we received critical input from dozens of community stakeholders to create digestible, interactive visualizations that were user-friendly. Importantly, the dashboard does not only provide visualizations, it also provides access to the underlying data itself for those who want a deeper look or have more data expertise and want to do some of their own work with the data. As cities are pressed to do more with less, it's more important than ever that those conversations and decisions are guided by data. And the Violence Reduction Dashboard is an important tool for achieving that. We want to recognize and thank the City of Chicago for being a partner in this and recognizing the importance of bringing data to people and being really transparent with data. So I'd like to now move into the presentation of the demo of the dashboard. Presenting the dashboard today is Javier Lopez, who's an analytics manager for the Crime Lab, where he has provided embedded analytics support to various city agencies and also participated in the evaluation of a recidivism reduction program. Currently, Javier also serves as the technical lead on an evaluation of gunshot detection technology and its effect on shooting lethality. We're also joined today by two analysts from Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, which is a division of Metropolitan Family Services based here in Chicago. Eric Balas is a senior data analyst with MPI, where he co-leads a team building a modernized data infrastructure to support Communities Partnering for Peace, or CP4P. CP4P is a 15-partner coalition working to reduce gun violence in Chicago's highest-risk neighborhoods. We're also joined by Maritza Moran, a data analyst at MPI, where she supports violence prevention and community engagement efforts by working with partner organizations and driving data-informed decision-making. Javier, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you very much, Katie, for the warm welcome. Let me go ahead and share screen. Okay, so here we are on the Violence Reduction Dashboard homepage. I first want to just start off by broadly orienting you to the 4 different pages of the Violence Reduction Dashboard. Specifically, what we're going to see is that the homepage and this 3rd page, Violence and Victimization Trends, they're going to be the ones with all the data tools and visualizations themselves. On the 2nd page here, we're going to see that we have a violence reduction strategy page. This is actually an overview of the city-funded violence prevention programs that were prioritized by the previous mayoral administration. But if you scroll down, you'll see some resources that are still relevant to this day. Finally, if you go over to the 4th page, we're going to have a glossary and resources. So you'll notice a short 10-minute video demo of the dashboard. And then importantly, you're going to notice all of the definitions of the violent crime types that are in the dashboard. So if you click on each of these and interact with them, you'll be able to see the definitions that we'll be going over today. And then just to highlight a few of these on the bottom, these are some of the methods used in the data themselves and how to transform some of the data. And so if you want to learn more about those, you can click on those as well. Going back to the homepage, I wanted to cover 2 quick ways to download the underlying data that's powering most of the dashboard. As Katie mentioned, that's directly accessible from the dashboard. So if you go on the homepage and scroll down, you'll notice this link that will redirect you to the Chicago Open Data Portal. And this is going to have a catalog of all those dashboards the data sets that help power the violence reduction dashboard. If you do decide to use these, if you click on one of the data set links themselves, you notice an About section that has an assortment of language that describes limitations and caveats about the data. So if you do decide to use these, I encourage you to read over that. And I'm just want to highlight that we're huge advocates of this resource at the Crime Lab, not just because we helped build it, but because we're still using it to this day for our own analytics. For instance, in our summer safety analysis, where we helped look at trends from last year and going back 5 years, as well as building tools to help our partners navigate gun violence in our city. We also use it for end of year crime report in Chicago every year. And so that's just another testament of how valuable it is. And then finally, we're currently using it for a causal impact analysis for one of our studies here in Chicago. The second way to download the data is a little bit more simplified. So if you're not sort of one of the savvier data folks and you want to just pull the underlying figures that you're seeing in each tool. So for instance, you want to pull these numbers in the table. Maybe you want to pull the percentages that you see here in this visualization, or maybe the underlying counts of victimization rates in this map. You'll notice that there's a download button at the bottom of each tool. If you click on that, then go to crosstab, it's going to redirect you to this download feature, which allows you to get the data sort of at the spreadsheet level. And that's going to allow you to reformat it or kind of reanalyze it in any way that you might be interested in. So encourage you to use those two approaches of accessing the data if that's relevant to you. Going back over to the top here, there's a couple more orientation points. So the first is the data on the dashboard is at the victim level. So suppose there was a shooting incident where it resulted in 3 shooting victimizations. The unit of observation we're going to see is 3 for those 3 victimizations. And the other orientation point here is that you'll notice on the top row of each visualization tool, there is a set of filters that's going to allow you to highly customize what you're looking at in that specific visualization. And so just to cover some of these, select date range is going to give you the ability to take it from the default, which is the year to date, to perhaps the past 28 days if recency is important to you. Or maybe you want to look at a full year, you can click on 2024 and get the full 2024 data. Or suppose you were interested in learning about the victimization counts that just occurred over Memorial Day weekend, you can customize that date range here as well. These next 2 filters, geography type and focus geography, they're going to actually work in harmony. And so if you select the geography type, you'll have a drop down of all the different underlying boundaries that are in the data. So community area in Chicago is representing our 77 neighborhoods. These are the official boundaries that have been sort of intact for decades. We have our political wards. We have an assortment of different police geographies. And we importantly have street outreach organizations. So these are areas of operation for our community violence intervention organizations, for instance, so they can click on this and sort of filter down to the areas that they're working in. And then this other tool is going to work in harmony with that geography type, where at the moment we're seeing the citywide level statistics. But if you unclick all, you can go down and click on a particular geography area. Suppose you wanted to learn more about the trends in Greater Garien Crossing, you can click on that and filter down the statistics to that geography. Next, we have the victim types. So the default setting is all victims. We also have the ability to filter on domestic violence victims, as well as juvenile victims, which are youth under 18. And the last filter that's going to be super relevant in all the other tools is the select crime type filter. So this is going to give you the ability to see the behavior of individual violent crime types. And again, if you're interested in learning how these are defined, you can go over to the glossary section on the 4th page. But now we can dive into some of the tools themselves. So as I've been kind of interacting with this first one, you'll notice that what we're seeing here is sort of, as one of the developers of the dashboard put it, a report card of the violent crime trends happening in Chicago. And at the moment, what we're looking at is the comparison of Greater Garien Crossing from 2024 to 2023. But suppose you wanted to look at what the year-to-date trends are in the city, you can go back and set up these filters in that way. And as Garien Gatewood pointed out, we have a large decrease right now that we're seeing year to date compared to prior years, in particular last year. Compared to last year at this time, we're seeing a violent crime decrease on the order of nearly 23%. Shooting victimizations are down 36.5% compared to the same time last year. but we do have some violent crime like criminal sexual assaults that have been increasing compared to the same time last year. Going over to this next tool, this is the demographics of victims. So if you wanted to better understand what the share of victimizations are by different demographic breakdowns, you can go to this tool and interact with it. And this is important. Suppose you were planning on how to prioritize services to make things more equitable in a particular geography. You can go here and see what the actual share of victimizations are by these different demographic types. So you notice the theme here on the default settings is year to date. We're looking at the citywide level trends for fatal and non-fatal shootings. So if we were to filter over to race, we can see that the overwhelming majority of shooting victimizations have been Black non-Hispanic individuals, representing about 72.5% of the total victims year to date. If we wanted to filter this down again to a full year's worth of data, suppose we were looking at providing services in Humboldt Park and wanted to know what the victimization group is there, we can filter this information as well and start to learn about the different trends in victimizations. Going over to this other tool, this is going to be the safety map bar graph. So this is going to combine this information so that we can show which areas experience the highest rates of violence per 10,000 residents. And the reason population is factored into this is because it will allow us to see like a standardized measure, which is going to give us the ability to compare victim counts in two different geographies, despite them having different population sizes. So at the moment, we're looking at year-to-date trends for fatal and non-fatal shootings adjusted by the population per 10,000 residents. The map on the left is going to have the color linked to the crime rate, so the victimization rate. So the darker shades of red are going to represent a higher victimization rate. And one interesting feature about this tool is as you hover over different geographies, you're going to see other areas highlighted as well alongside of it. And what that means is that those other areas that are highlighted ranked similarly in terms of their shooting rate in this case. And so it's just a good way to be able to see how equitable or inequitable, rather, violent crime is in the city of Chicago. The bar graph on the right is going to work in harmony using that same sort of highlighting feature where each of these numbers here represent the bins of victimization rates. For instance, right now we're looking at shooting rates, so 2 to 3 per 10,000, and you can hover over those different bars to see the community areas that rank similarly. Okay, now I'll go over to the third page. This is going to be a page that I think will give one the ability to better operationalize the insights they're getting from this tool for things like resource allocation, whether it's by time or by geographic space. This first tool is going to be, it's going to give one the ability to get a better sense of how trends are evolving over time. So what we're looking at here is the daily rolling average count of victims by year, with the line for each year going back to 2019. And this red line here is going to be representing the current year, so 2025. And just to give you a little bit more context about the unit of measurement here, we're not actually looking at the single victim count within, or that occurred on June 2nd. What we're looking at is the victimizations that occurred on June 2nd alongside the daily victimizations that occurred in the 27 days prior to that. And what this is doing is basically a method that data practitioners use to help smooth out a lot of the day-to-day variation. For instance, if we toggle this over to the single day count, you're going to notice that the day-to-day variation in victim counts tend to be quite noisy. So this is just going to give us the ability to get a better sense of longer term trends. And in particular, if you're wondering whether we're seeing a spike or decrease this year and wondering how it compares to other seasons in prior years, this tool is going to give you the ability to see if the spike, decrease, or gradual increase, as we're seeing in this plot right now, if that's unusual or consistent with prior seasons. And it's also helpful for planning. Like suppose you're wondering when to expect certain types of violent crime to spike. So in this case, shootings, we can see that from June through like late August, there's always been a gradual increase or an increase in shootings going into the summer. So a good tool for that use case. Now we can go over to the heat density map, and we'll give it a second to reload here. Okay, so this tool is going to give you the ability to identify hotspots of violence at a much more granular level than any other tools that are in the dashboard themselves. So suppose you wanted to program resources to restore vacant lots in, let's say, like Humboldt Park. We can go down and filter this data to that particular geography. And suppose you were interested in filtering or putting these vacant lots in areas where shooting violence has been heavily concentrated. At the moment, with the year-to-date trends, we can somewhat make out a hotspot here on the southeastern portion of Humboldt Park. But if we wanted to see what it looks like for a full years of data, we can filter this, for instance, to 2024, and the trends should start to become a lot more pronounced. Yeah, so we have this southern portion, which is experiencing a high density of shootings based on what we saw in 2024. You could zoom in into this and get a better sense of the streets that this covers. This should render in a second here, but as this is rendering, it's important to note that the points here are jittered to protect the privacy of victims, and they're jittered in a way that are going to be like an average city block of where the actual incident occurred. So suppose we're looking at where my cursor is, or not there at the moment, but suppose we're looking at a point. If you were to draw the average city block size, which is about 660 feet, or approximately 2 football fields, you'll be able to see that that's actually where the incident occurred versus where the point is. And again, that's just done to protect the privacy of the victims. All right, now we can go over to the change map. This is a tool that's going to give you the ability to understand changes over time, both at the city level, which is going to be represented here on the right, and at individual geography levels, which is illustrated on the map on the left. So at the moment, we're looking at year-to-date trends for fatal and non-fatal shootings. Living in such a large city, I know that sometimes what we see in the press or in the media, we can see like that there are trends that are being discussed. So for instance, the shooting victimization levels are at really low levels year to date compared to prior years, as we can see by this data, which is true. But suppose we were residents in a community area where we felt like there's probably been an increase and we wanted to answer that question. Well, we can go over to this tool and compare the victimization counts at the different geography levels. So here what I'm doing is toggling over to compare 2024 to 2025. And the values that are represented in the map are the differences in victimization counts from those 2 years. And the colors denote sort of if shootings in this case are cooling down or heating up, where cooling down would be represented by the darker shades towards blue, and then heating up, which means like there's been more victimizations, would be denoted by a darker shade towards red. Which is so what we can see in this graph is despite these trends in decreasing shooting rates, there are micro geographies that are experiencing a heightened level of shooting violence. So Rogers Park is one that stands out in this graph right now. What we can see is that there's been 13 shooting victimizations, which are over double of what we saw last year, and they're up by nearly like a factor of 4 from what we saw in pre-pandemic levels, like in 2019. Going over to the last tool on this page, this is going to get us a better sense of when violence has been mostly concentrated. And we can do this by looking at the time of day here, that's here on the x-axis, or the day of the week that's on the y-axis. And perhaps what's easier for the eye is to kind of look at what shades or what areas are increasingly covering like the blue clusters, and that's just going to allow you to compare the time of day and day of week simultaneously. So here we're looking at year-to-date shootings, and we can see that shootings have been most concentrated on Saturdays at 1 a.m. at the city level. But suppose like we're going into the summer now, we wanted to understand what shootings look like last summer in terms of time. We can input the Memorial Day week to roughly the end of Labor Day, and then filter this information. And we'll see how the trends change. So what this tells me here is that shootings last summer at the city level were concentrated roughly around 8 p.m. through 3 a.m. and mostly on weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and in the early morning hours of Monday. And then one last step on this graph, if you wanted to partition out the suppose the average weekend against the average weekday for the current like filtered settings, you can hover over this block here to see what those trends are by the time of day. All right, and that should cover it. I do want to just mention, the dashboard is super customizable, hopefully, as I demonstrated today. It's really helpful at operationalizing responses to violence in our city. But we, at the same time, acknowledge that there are some organizations like MPI that we're going to learn from today that might find it even more value to customize these data using their own reports and dashboards. So we're super thrilled to invite our partners at MPI to illustrate how they were able to make sort of bespoke resources to support their coalition of community violence intervention partners. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues and partners. Thank you.
Javier, thank you so much for that kind of introduction. And I was learning quite a bit about some of the other resources. There's quite a bit of wealth of resources on this dashboard, as we can all see. So yeah. Again, my name is Eric. I'm with Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, along with my colleague Maritza, and we are, as was mentioned earlier, super users. This is a resource that I use pretty much on a daily basis to inform our work. So I'll give you all a little bit of an introduction around Metropolitan Peace Initiatives and the work that we do, community violence intervention. So Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, or MPI, is an organization that engages in and supports community violence intervention work across the city of Chicago. And CVI is a broad term, but in general, this work is accomplished through what we like to call as credible messengers who seek out and mentor those individuals most at risk of being victims or being involved in gun violence. And we use a suite of holistic wraparound services to help accomplish this by responding to gun violence as it occurs, but also trying to implement preventative measures and using behavior change to steer those individuals in a different direction. So MPI is the convener of Communities Partnering for Peace, or CP4P, which is a coalition of 15 community-based organizations all around the city of Chicago engaging in the CVI work. And we at MPI, our main goal is to support these organizations through a broad suite of services. So we host the Metropolitan Peace Academy in Pilsen, a community area in Chicago, and that helps train CVI workers around some of the standard best practices in our field. We have a team of specialists in behavioral health, legal aid, and data, among other programs to help our partner organizations. So we can move on to the next slide. So we're going to present a few use cases of how we use this this dashboard on a daily basis to inform our own work and, crucially, our partners. So As data professionals, my team and I certainly like to dig into the underlying data sets that power the VR dashboard for more curated analysis. And we will demonstrate this in later slides, but I would say this first violence and victimization trends graph is a super crucial tool that we use quite a bit, and it's a way to and as has been previously mentioned, year-to-date trends, you have to have some caution around interpreting those, but it is just a good way to get a baseline understanding of some of the most up-to-date trends in gun violence across the city. And so here, I was working on a project in North Lawndale, which is a community area on the west side of Chicago. And every one of our meetings, we would start with this snapshot, as you can see, just to get, like I said, a base level of understanding of the most up-to-date violence trends in the community. So we're all working from the same level. And just to get our partners more used to working with data and use it more as a tool to inform their work that they're doing on the ground. So I can pass it over to Maritza, and she'll explain some of her use cases as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maritza. I'm a data analyst at MPI as well with Eric here. And I'll just go over some usage as far as the VR dashboard and the work that we do as well. Alongside other data analysts and other people on our team, we are able to create things like this legislative fact sheet, which we join with our data that we have from those organizations on the ground, and to have more of a holistic view of just violence in different areas such as ward, state rep, and state senate districts. So these are in our in the work that we do. These were created for our policy team, and that policy team is able to share these with heads of office and just informing individuals like that about the work that we do, which is crucial because it's crucial for people to be informed and have a good idea of the work that we're doing in their communities and their wards and their state rep and senate districts. So that's an example of that. We can go to the next slide. And another dashboard that was also created internally was this weekend holiday shooting snapshot. More recently, again, with the data that we have internally, we're able to join that with the VR dashboard data that Javier presented, and able to use that as a data source in our visualizations. And the most recent example is Memorial Day weekend. People on our team put something together to kind of display how, because the VR dashboard has so many ways to be filtered, we are able to filter by community, specifically the organizations that we work with, and see how maybe certain communities or certain organizations might be impacted on certain weekends or certain holiday weekends like Memorial Day. So it's very informative to our work, and from there we're able to communicate these findings to our field managers and onto, like we mentioned, the organizations on the ground that are actually doing the work with outreach workers and all of that. Next slide. So yeah, this is just kind of a continuation of that dashboard, just different areas looking into fatal versus non-fatal. And again, we're able to kind of filter, compare the organization areas that we work with versus outside our CP4P areas as well. So we're able to use the data very to be able to distinguish between those things. And these last two slides is just a kind of overview. We work directly with our partners as data analysts. We go to kind of tell a story of what the data is looking like. So for this goes into community-specific data, looking at fatal versus non-fatal for the various communities that we work with. So able to kind of inform them in that way at the community level, as well as in the next slide. You're able to see kind of like a map of what data might look like for a specific organization. So the organization here that we work with is Project Hood. So just creating visualizations to display the homicide versus fatal, fatal versus non-fatal numbers throughout the year, and just again a visual of what shootings are looking like, victimizations are looking like throughout the past few years, to kind of inform maybe the work that they're doing, what areas to focus on within their outreach team or their flip team that they have on staff as well. I think we can go to the next.
Yeah. And this final use case that we have is a map that we created for one of our partner organizations who serves broadly the Humboldt Park community area and many other North Side community areas in Chicago. So as you may imagine, the VR dashboard is an excellent data source to track violence that has already happened. But we definitely try to use this as a tool to connect with the data that we collect ourselves and to inform our work. So this is an example. And also another cool feature of this dashboard is that you can filter by street organization. So those are the many of the organizations that in Communities Partnering for Peace are included in this VR dashboard, and it will you are able to filter the incidents that occurred in a particular street outreach coverage zone. So where our partner organizations are actually engaged in the community and the specific areas where they're focused in. So this is a map displaying shooting incidents over a certain time period, and alongside conflict mediations that also engaged in. So they are, we have outreach workers, street outreach organizations on the ground, engaging with individuals who potentially high-risk individuals, and also just community members, and trying to seek out potential conflicts that could lead to gun violence in the future, and interrupting that in the process. And as you can imagine, this is very time-intensive work. It requires a lot of delicate negotiation tactics, but also a lot of information. And so being able to utilize a source where we can track where violence may have already occurred, alongside where conflicts are potentially erupting, you can identify patterns or any other trends, and just serve as another tool for our teams that are engaged in this really difficult work. So this is several of many use cases that we use, but I hope, as you can see, there's many different directions that you can go with just utilizing this fairly simple data source. So we'll pass it back over to the team. Thank you.
Thanks so much to Javier, Eric, and Maritza for that really terrific overview of the dashboard and examples of the ways to leverage the data. I hope what's clear from this is a really rich tool, and hopefully provide something for everyone, from an interested individual who has some curiosity about crime in their neighborhood, for example, all the way to someone who is a super user like Eric or Maritza, who is integrating the data in the dashboard into their own data and creating new visualizations that are informing and driving their work. I want to take the time now to dive into some discussion and Q&A based on the questions that have been coming in. And I want to start by responding to a number of questions that we received over the past few weeks as we received registration. from folks in other cities, curious about where to start if they wanted to develop a dashboard like this. So we thought we'd start with a few tips and lessons learned from our experience building this dashboard. I think a really crucial first step is to understand what data exists already across departments and agencies in your jurisdiction. The Crime Lab had an advantage. We have spent 15 years working with gun violence data as part of our evaluation of various programs and partnerships. So we really knew the data well, and having that knowledge of the existing data is an important first step. I think next, it's really important to understand the use cases. Creating a compelling story about the use cases can help justify an investment in this kind of build out. And it is an investment. It's an investment of time. It's an investment of resources. It's an investment of partnership, right? You have to build relationship to make the partnerships to do this. But understanding the use cases can also inform your data collection priorities. So you understand what data is out there. There might need to be additional data collected or integrated, and the use cases inform that. So in the case of the Chicago dashboard, the Chicago Police Department had begun relying more heavily on localized data analysis to think about resource allocation and deployment. And that shift in practice within the Chicago Police Department, we leveraged that to make the case that community violence intervention organizations and CBOs could benefit from more timely data access to inform their own work and understand what was happening in the city. I think building the momentum through small wins is really important. It's easy to envision the whole universe of what might be possible, but starting small and building support can help justify the major investment that it might take to build something more complex. So in Chicago, we started with weekly static maps that were shared with a handful of stakeholders that had key data points per community. And the creation of those maps and those visualizations demonstrated the demand and the value to some key government stakeholders who were able then to take up the mantle and champion the creation of this tool and its residents at the City of Chicago's website. It also allowed us to get feedback from users. We might think that we know what's going to be helpful, but is there something that's not as helpful as we imagine it might be? Are there things that are missing? That feedback loop was important to building the tool. And finally, assembling the right team is important. I alluded to partnerships earlier, but identifying key champions within the government who are going to help you get and sustain the institutional support that it takes to build and then continue something like this, and who can help navigate the political and bureaucratic challenges that are inherent in building something like this is really essential. So in Chicago, that team consisted of folks from the mayor's office. We already heard from Garien, who provided political support, but also the cross-departmental coordination that's necessary to build something like this. We had a team at the Crime Lab who, as I mentioned, had significant technical expertise that was instrumental in building and maintaining the dashboard. And then the Chicago Police Department, the data owner, which is now responsible for the long-term maintenance of the dashboard. So for folks who might be from other cities, other jurisdictions who are interested in exploring this kind of thing, we also just want to point you to a potential resource. Every town has created a resource kit for those who might be interested in building local gun violence dashboards. And we'll share the link to this tool and this toolkit, but that might also be a resource for folks who are interested in exploring this possibility in their own jurisdiction. So with that, hopefully that tackles some of the questions, but wanted to kick it over to our panelists. And the first question, which I'll direct to Javier from the assembled crowd, is what software was used to produce this dashboard and these visualizations?
Thank you, Katie. The underlying software being used is Tableau. And Tableau is a data visualization platform that allows you to sort of ingest and process raw data and then put it into these visualizations that we see in the dashboard.
Thanks. Another question, is there a parallel dashboard showing economic and demographic data with the same sort of ranges? Combining that with the violence data might help show root causes and guide resource distribution. So Javier, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the census data we've used in conjunction with the dashboard.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, so we often query census data from several avenues, but the one that comes to mind right now is through a resource called Tidy Census, where we're able to see the different census estimates at micro geographies and get a better understanding of, like, for instance, like median income, the poverty rate, unemployment rate, and several different socioeconomic factors that occur at those micro geography levels. And we often looked at that alongside gun violence trends. And there are a lot of interesting studies. One that can be referenced is in a Vital City article that was written by one of our founders at the Crime Lab. This is an article that's published in Vital City named "Does Nothing Stop a Bullet Like a Job?" where Jens Ludwig describes several things, but the comparison that is relevant to this question is how we look at trends in median income against the shooting victims, the shooting victimization rates at the community area level, and how we see a wide disparity of different shooting levels despite having similar median income. So we do often use these census data. And I'll put that link in the chat.
Thanks, Javier. Another question from a participant. Is there any documentation available around the calculated fields that are used in the workbook?
Very good question. I don't think there is documentation on that. This is a pipeline that was established in CPD's, the Chicago Police Department's sort of environment, and all the documentation, I think, would live within that environment and not sort of publicly available. But if we want to learn more about the data themselves, those data, the open data portal will have several definitions and sort of caveats on how the data is being processed and what's available.
Great. Here's one that I can answer. We're getting a lot of questions about sharing the information in this presentation. I want to remind for folks who might have joined a few minutes late, we will post the slides and the recording of this presentation. We encourage you to refer back to them. I know the visualizations are a lot. I know the letters are tiny. So we encourage people to go back to those and also to share them widely. Folks are asking if it's okay to share on social, and we encourage folks to share these resources as widely as they're inclined. So thanks so much. We had a question about turning off the dots to better see hotspots. So Javier, can you talk a little bit about what functions can and cannot be turned off with respect to the hotspots and the dots that are on the visualization you showed?
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not a feature that's included at the moment in the dashboard. But you can pull the underlying data via those open data portal resources that I shared, and you can plot the points on a map without the sort of the density hotspots that are being represented in that visualization in particular. And just as a reminder, the points are jittered to protect the privacy of citizens and victims that we're seeing here in the dashboard.
Did you just say jittered?
Jittered, yes. Sorry for the jargon.
I learn new terms every time we talk, so I'm delighted.
Basically, it's randomized. So if we're looking at a point plotted on the map, and if you draw a circle roughly the size of 2 football fields, the actual incident occurred within that circle as opposed to where the point is being shown.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
What is another question from the field? What is the recency or timeliness of the data? I know we described this as a near real-time dashboard. How frequently is the data refreshed?
It's refreshed every 48 hours. And one thing to flag is if you're looking at this data and refreshing it, even if you go back a year or two, you'll notice some changes in victimization counts, and this could happen because of several reasons, but the ones that come to mind are because, like, for instance, say if you had a non-fatal shooting victimization that later succumbed to their wounds and it became fatal, those figures would be updated, or perhaps a crime type definition evolved from, let's say, an aggravated assault to a aggravated battery. That's another reason why we might see those change.
Great. A question for the MPI folks. The questioner says, we've been doing some violence prevention training through a state grant. that's a community-specific grant. Can we use this site to verify if participant addresses are in the proper community we've been assigned to serve? MPI, curious whether you've ever used the dashboard or the data in the dashboard for that kind of purpose, to check a match between a service area and location.
Yeah, definitely. The data that's includes, like Javier was saying, an approximate address of the location of the shooting incident. And there's a variety of geographies that are included in the data set. And so we definitely utilize this to match to the particular communities that we're interested in focusing in on.
Great. I want to make sure that we end on time. We respect the time of the folks who have joined us today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to acknowledge we didn't get to all of the questions, and so we are happy to prepare a Q&A doc that we can share with the recording and with some of the resources, so folks can have that to refer to as well. Really want to thank everyone for joining us today. We really hope that you find the demo and the conversation useful. I think the city of Chicago should be commended for really taking a leadership role in thinking about data availability and data transparency. And I've been really impressed and amazed to see the range of things and use cases that people find for this data set beyond what we even might have imagined when we were first building the dashboard. So hopefully you found this useful and interesting. We really want to encourage everyone to stay up to date with the Crime Lab's work. To do so, you can visit our website. You can sign up for our newsletter and follow us on LinkedIn. We post a lot of great content there. So as a reminder, we will be posting the recording on our website in the coming days. And we really do encourage folks to share the website, the recording, and the resource, the dashboard, with your friends and colleagues who weren't able to join us today. So with that, I will wrap us up and thank everybody so much for their participation, for their attendance today. And we wish you a wonderful rest of your afternoon.